So the 2020 Democratic field is indeed taking shape. We have some new Fox polling data that's in. It shows the former Vice President Joe Biden, Senator Bernie Sanders are leading the charge, way ahead of the rest of the field, even though Biden hasn't officially declared that he's even running yet. He's 31% overall from likely Democratic primary voters, with Bernie Sanders right behind there, 23%. Everybody else single digits. Kamala Harris, Beto O'Rourke, 8%. apiece. Now, when you switch it up and go head-to-head with President Trump in terms of the matchup with the Democrats, Biden again leads against the president, 47-40, and Bernie does well as well, beating out President Trump. Now, if you look at the rest, in terms of the ones that we measured, both Sanders and Warren, or both Warren, I should say, and Kamala Harris are trailing President Trump just barely. So it's Biden and Bernie doing the best. Okay, joining us now, CivicPAC Forum Chairman Ford O'Connell and also New Heights Communications President Christy Setzer. So, Ford, I use those numbers to set it up. We'll get to Christy on the Democrats and how they're shaping up in a moment. But first, maybe a brief thought to follow up on what we were just talking about. The Mueller probe, as it wraps up, do those conclusions or lack thereof make the president a much more formidable candidate for re-election? Does it have an impact, in your view, immediately on the race, as far out as it is?
Well, I think that this is a huge victory for President Trump and for America. But I will say this. When it comes to winning re-election, President Trump's biggest worry was not the Russia probe or who the Democratic Party might field as his presidential nominee. His biggest concern is whether or not we have a recession in the fall of 2020 or a major economic blip. Remember, as the incumbent, he is still technically the favorite and therefore most likely to win re-election as of right now.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, Christy, that Ford makes, because for all this talk about is it Biden versus Trump, is it Bernie, is it somebody else emerging, if the economy turns down, there's signs overseas that may already be happening, and if the U.S. catches the cold, then the president's in trouble. Do you agree with that, as opposed to looking at this early on as kind of a binary matchup and who the best matchup is for the president, or the worst?
I do. I mean, look, I think polls that are taken about a year out from the Iowa caucuses are obviously very subject to change. And I also think that, people are going to be looking to reelect the president based on, one, yes, the economy, but also this sort of nebulous idea of do they like the things that he says all day long? It's less about policy, more about his personality. As a person.
Okay, so if it is, let me stay with you, Christy, on that for a moment. Won't it matter then, in that particular case, who he's running against? Because they'd be picking Biden versus Trump or Bernie versus Trump. I mentioned those two because they're polling so well. And what's interesting in the Fox poll, maybe not surprising, but interesting, Bernie Sanders does so well among young people. And that's why he's in the top. Biden does very well among, old people. And that's why he's on the top. But there's such a separation between those two and the rest of the Democratic field. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, the other thing that those two have in common is that those are the two candidates that have by far the highest name ID. They're polling the best because we're talking about the former vice president, and we're talking about Bernie Sanders, who, other than Hillary Clinton, is the person who we remember most from the 2016 Democrats. So, so it's not that surprising that right now is aligned with who's doing the best. What's maybe interesting is that both of them are the two that are also polling so well against Donald Trump, which is to say that people that we have the most informed opinion of on the Democratic side, both of them are beating Trump, and therefore maybe others that we also will have in the future a more informed idea about would also beat Donald Trump.
As a quick final point for it, I think it is surprising to some people to see early on at least Bernie Sanders doing that well against Trump. Maybe not Biden, but...
Well, look, I think in the spirit of March Madness, we're already down to the Democratic presidential Final Four. It's the three Bs, Bernie, Biden, and Beto, and Kamala Harris. And in terms of the general election, just remember, it's likely going to be a replay of 2016, and essentially 45 states are already decided. The question is, can Trump continue winning in the Midwest, and can he hold Florida and Arizona? If he does, he will be reelected.